I, female, 37, built a small online business. I went solo after the initial group I was going to work with basically did nothing but toss around some ideas and demand endless meetings that took place too often aside from daily calls that led nowhere. It was a vicious circle, and I realized that they had zero knowledge of what they were trying to achieve and were pretty much using me as a resource. I removed myself from their presence and started to do my own thing. The minute that I had to invest in actually creating my company was when it became official that they had zero claim, as they never wanted to put down a penny, but wanted to latch on to other people for knowledge, money, contacts, etc. Important, I developed my own idea that I refused to put on the table. I'm very cautious about getting involved with other people business-wise. This is important to the story because it was a huge lesson. Also, none of my boyfriends have been allowed insight into my finances/career business life. Things are very stable for me. I've been dipping my toes in the acquisition and bought 2 small companies for a very modest price and have been working on growing them. I met my now ex-boyfriend, Kenny, 38, male, around the time I bought one of the tiny companies. I'm not a naturally extroverted person, so we had situations when he tried to ask about my finances. All he knows is that I'm self-employed, a few superficial details, but I'm not comfortable sharing more than that. We were together for 2 years, and I did open up to him about so many things about my childhood and myself that I thought he was my best friend. He introduced me to his family and everything. I would have loved to have a long-term relationship, but he flat out said he wasn't interested in marriage. This hurt a lot, but I had no choice but to respect his decision and see how I could best deal with my feelings. He said he still wanted our relationship, but there will be no marriage. Fast forward, and he invited his family over to his house. I brought some food and got to spend time with his grandma. Everything was okay until his siblings started to low-key pitching me business ideas. I made the stupid move to use the excuse that I didn't have access to my computer to read the stuff they were sending me, so they brought me a tablet. I was surprised and put off, but when brother-in-law said something that led me to think they thought I could invest, I politely disengaged and went back to the BBQ. Kenny changed after that. He hardly held my hand or gave me affection. It was such a drastic change that I asked what was going on, and he point-blank said he needed a different kind of person by his side. I was so surprised at his bluntness that I couldn't even react, except by avoiding asking more questions, because I kind of knew it was because of the BBQ. I know Kenny would love for his family to be successful, but I wouldn't agree on being someone's step of the ladder. I'm not wealthy. I just have some nice things because I've done my best to look after myself and pulled my own weight, and I hate being used. Kenny has had issues holding down a job for a year but won't tell me what's going on, and that's fine. We will never be married nor build a home together. Last December, I was still trying to build the courage to walk away from the relationship as I saw no way out, and this affected my libido, and he complained. His grandmother invited everyone to a family reunion. I attended because she's such a sweet old lady, and she was looking forward to my cheesecake, and I really didn't mind. She's Kenny's paternal grandma. My ex-Phil and ex-Mill are divorced. I don't know how to verbalize this because I'm so mad, but Kenny used that occasion to engagement prank me. As background, this pranking thing put a dent in our relationship and was one of the things we had many issues about. His pranks made me feel stressed out and had a humiliation component. Because of this, I stopped talking to him for 2 weeks before he told me that marriage wasn't a possibility. He stopped doing it after I cut him off. So I was trying to get some punch and noticed everyone looking at me and like there were a lot more people in the living room. I'm kind of dense when surrounded by crowds, and I think this was a little helpful because it took me a hot minute to understand what was happening. I turned around and saw Kenny kneeling down. Initially, I thought he was trying to do a dancing skeet or whatever. He drew a small box and handed it to me, and he was laughing. I was petrified because things didn't make sense. He opened the box on my face and showed a small aluminum foil ring in it. I immediately turned around and kept walking. I wish everything had died right there. Everyone was laughing. I had to fight back my tears because for a split second during all the confusion, I thought it might be true. He followed me to my car along with some of his relatives. All I wanted was to leave as soon as possible because I was ashamed. I exploded when he wouldn't shut up and tried to get me to relax and go back to the party. I'm embarrassed because I know I made a scene by driving home and gathering all his shoot and leaving it in a trash bag on his grandma's porch, and his family saw me. He tried to reach out and asked me to apologize to his family and that I caused him problems by writing all his failures in our group chat. I don't know if I should even apologize to his grandma, as the whole trash bag with his belongings drama took place outside and she wasn't around. I don't think I should apologize, but also I know some of the onlookers seem perplexed and embarrassed. Am I the idiot? I already dumped him. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, he was jealous of your success and bragged to his family. He could get you to invest in their harebrained ideas. When you didn't, it made him look dumb to his family, so he started chipping away at your confidence. The prank engagement was the topper. You did the right thing by dumping him. He wasn't on your level and probably just wanted to use you as a purse. You deserve better. Marriage isn't the end game in life. You have so much more ahead of you. Glad you got that anchor off your neck. I would just leave it alone and block all the numbers. Just move on. Comment 2. Not the idiot, he dug his own grave. Honestly, it sounds like him and his siblings want something from you that you're not comfortable giving, and his behavior is freaking disgusting. Apologize to his grandmother if you feel you must, but then stop engaging with his family and move on. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been 2 weeks since my last post, and boy do I have an update for you all. After the whole engagement prank fiasco and the trash bag incident, things have been interesting, to say the least. So after I left Kenny's stuff on his grandma's porch, I went home and tried to cool off. I was fuming, not just because of the prank, but because I felt like I was being used by Kenny and his family for my business success. Remember how I mentioned Kenny's job issues? Well, turns out he was fired again, and this time, he was banking on me to be his financial safety net. A few days after the incident, Kenny's grandma called me. She's always been kind to me, and I didn't want to be rude, so I answered. She apologized for Kenny's behavior and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mostly because I didn't want to burn bridges with the sweet old lady. We met up, and she told me about Kenny's childhood, how he always struggled to fit in, and how his parents' divorce affected him. She said she understood why I was upset, but asked if there was any way we could come to a compromise. I told her I'd think about it. Meanwhile, my business was booming. I was in the middle of negotiations to merge one of the small companies I bought with a competitor, which would double our market share. It was a huge deal for me, and I was pouring all my energy into it. Then, out of the blue, Kenny showed up at my office. He had never been there before, and I was shocked to see him. He said he wanted to talk and that he had a proposal for me. I was wary but curious, so I let him speak. Kenny had this idea for a new business venture, something he'd been working on for a while but never mentioned because he knew I didn't want to mix our relationship with business. He said he realized he had been wrong to try and use me and that he wanted to make it right by offering me a partnership in his new venture. I was taken aback. Kenny had never shown any real business acumen before, but the idea he presented was actually good. It was a niche market that I hadn't considered, and it had potential. But after everything that had happened, I was hesitant. I told Kenny I needed time to think about it. I consulted with my lawyer and a few trusted business advisors. They all said the same thing. The idea had merit, but partnering with Kenny was risky, given our history. After a lot of thought, I came up with a compromise. I would invest in Kenny's venture, but I wouldn't be a partner. Instead, I would be a silent investor with a minority stake. That way, I could benefit if the business took off, but I wouldn't be tied to Kenny. I presented the offer to Kenny, and he was initially disappointed. He had hoped this would bring us back together, but I was firm. Business and personal life had to remain separate. In the end, he agreed to my terms. The negotiations for the merger of my company were successful, And with the extra time I had, I started mentoring a young entrepreneur who reminded me a lot of myself when I was starting out. It felt good to give back and help someone else avoid the pitfalls I had encountered. As for Kenny, his business venture is doing well and my investment is paying off. We're not back together, and I doubt we ever will be, but we found a way to coexist in the business world. And his grandma? She's thrilled that we found a way to work together without the personal drama. She still invites me to family events, and I go because despite everything, I've grown fond of her. I suggested a threesome to fix our marriage after her affair, but she threatened divorce. We took legal action, and now we're rebuilding. So this is pretty much over, but I would like to know if I should have done something differently. A few months ago, I, 36-year-old male, found out my wife, 32-year-old female, was cheating on me. I was mostly hurt about some of the lies she told. Things like her missing dinner with my family because she had other plans, which turns out to be the other woman. I always knew she was bisexual, and I'm not super possessive. Before we got married, we had a semi-open relationship. We would give hall passes for special occasions, or sometimes if we just wanted one ourselves. It worked for us at the time. She especially liked being able to sleep with women because it gave her something I wasn't really able to give her. We played with the idea of a threesome, but it never really happened. In hindsight, it was always something on her end, which I probably should have noticed. But she suggested it a couple of times, so I didn't think she was against it. Before we got engaged, we talked about marriage, and we decided we wanted a closed marriage. Once we got married, we both understood that we were not even allowed to ask for a hall pass. We were happy with that decision. But a few months ago, she told me about the affair. I was asking her about a girls' night she was supposed to have, and she felt guilty and told me it was actually her going to hook up with a coworker. I didn't want to get divorced over this, but it definitely hurt me. I lost a lot of trust, but we decided to work on it. At first, she offered me a hall pass, but I thought it was hypocritical for me to do that to her. After a few therapy sessions, I decided to accept, without any real plans to follow through. But then I had an idea. I thought a threesome might bring us closer somehow, like it would be a bonding experience. Needless to say, she didn't take the suggestion well. She said I'm trying to leverage her mistake into something that she wouldn't otherwise agree to, and that I was trying to shame her. I never intended any of that. She left and said she would send divorce papers as soon as she could get a lawyer. So am I the jerk for suggesting a threesome? P.S. Throwaway because my family and friends know my Reddit account. Update. So we met for a therapy session today. A lot came out, but the short version is she was trying to give me a way out. Apparently, someone at work found out and berated her, called her a lot of inappropriate and some hateful things, and told her to divorce me for my sake. She said that when I suggested the threesome, it bothered her, but quickly led her to think a divorce was the best thing for me, and that she was doing me a favor. I know a lot of comments said I'm better off, but that wasn't what this was about, and frick you, I still love her. I also apologize for my part in suggesting it in the first place. We decided to work things out and work on communication, which is obviously a big problem in our relationship. We're also planning on opening up our marriage. It seems like the best place for both of us. We're going to make a plan and rules, but I think it will work. We also discussed the possibility of a threesome. Apparently, her reluctance was due to my reluctance for an MMF threesome. When we were dating, I wasn't into the idea. She thought it was unfair because that's something she's into. Since we got married, though, I have grown and am open to an MMF, so it might happen. We decided not to pursue that until we are in a stronger place in our marriage. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You took the bait, mate. She wanted to leave you and just needed an excuse to pin the whole ordeal on you. If she was regretful, she could have calmly explained why that's not an option for her. Instead, she took offense when all you did was grant her something she never extended to you, being open and honest about your desires. She went behind your back, abused your trust, and she's too proud to allow herself to feel shame, so that's why she must blame you. Somehow, this is your fault now, Unless there is a massive and tearful apology coming, you should probably part ways and not look back. Comment 2. Bro, just get a divorce and move on. This marriage is over. Like, damn, dog. I think she was just staying with you for a little bit, but probably realized she's better off with her AP. You should have divorced, man. And for the love of God, don't include other people in your marriage. It's okay to have fantasies, but bringing it to reality could cause a lot of damage. Look at the amount of Reddit threads of how marriages were ruined because they brought someone in. Stand up for yourself. Move on, bro. You deserve better. Now for the update. 3 days ago, I posted about the turmoil in my marriage after discovering my wife's affair. I was overwhelmed by the support and advice from strangers on the internet. I've been reflecting a lot, and I think it's time for an update. We had another therapy session, and it was like a bomb went off. My wife broke down and confessed that her coworker, the one she had the affair with, had been blackmailing her. She was terrified of losing her job and the respect of her peers. This coworker had threatened to expose their affair if she didn't continue it. I was floored. The injustice of it all made my blood boil. My wife was a victim too, in a way I hadn't realized. I remembered how she'd been acting strangely before the affair came to light. She was stressed, losing sleep, and I'd catch her staring off into space. I thought it was work pressure, but now I know it was the fear of being exposed. She'd been trapped in a situation with no easy way out. The therapist helped us navigate this new revelation. We talked about the power dynamics at her workplace and how it wasn't just about our marriage anymore. It was about her being coerced and manipulated. I saw her in a new light, not just as my wife who had made a mistake, but as someone who had been backed into a corner. We decided to take legal action against the coworker. It was a risky move, but we couldn't let this person control our lives any longer. The thought of confronting her blackmailer was terrifying for my wife, but I promised to stand by her side through it all. In the midst of this, we also revisited our past. We talked about how we used to be so open with each other, sharing our desires without judgment. It was a stark contrast to the secrets and lies that had crept into our marriage. We both acknowledged that we missed that openness and wondered if it could be part of our healing process. The therapist suggested we start with small steps, rebuilding trust before diving into anything as complex as an open marriage or a threesome. We agreed. It was clear we had a lot of work to do on our foundation before adding any new elements. As we left the therapist's office, my wife took my hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant. It was the first time since the affair that I felt like we were truly united in facing a problem together. We spent the next few days talking more than we had in months. We discussed everything from our daily routines to our deepest fears. It was exhausting, but necessary. We were peeling back layers of hurt and misunderstanding, trying to find the love that was buried underneath. Then, 2 days ago, we had a confrontation with her blackmailer. We met in a public place, a coffee shop, with our lawyer. The coworker tried to play it cool, but you could see the panic in their eyes when they realized we weren't going to be pushed around anymore. Our lawyer was a force to be reckoned with, laying out the legal consequences of blackmail and harassment. The coworker crumbled, apologizing profusely. They promised to leave us alone and begged us not to press charges. We didn't make any promises, but the sense of relief was palpable. My wife was shaking when we left, but there was a look of triumph in her eyes. Yesterday, we spent the day at home, just being with each other. We didn't talk much about the affair or the blackmail. Instead, we focused on the present. We cooked together, watched a movie, and for a few hours it felt like old times. But we know we're not out of the woods yet. There's still a lot of healing to do. We're taking it one day at a time, one conversation at a time, and for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about our future. We're not the same people we were when we got married, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we can be better. My husband doubts Ava can stay home alone, so I fight for her independence, but when the grandparents accuse her, oh boy, truth wins out. I've 30 years old, been with my husband 41 years old for 8 years, married for 6. I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter, Ava, who lives with us full-time and has very little contact with her biological mom. I've been acting as her mother since we got married, and I'm very fortunate to have such a close relationship with her. She's less than 6 months away from turning 17, and she's always been a great kid. More than great. She's what many people describe as their dream child. Sweet, smart, studious, careful, and calm. My husband can be a bit strict with his rules for her, but I honestly don't see the need most of the time. She makes good choices on her own, so I try to let her be more independent. This leads to a lot of conflicts between him and me. Subconsciously, he sees himself as her only real parent while still wanting me to behave fully as one, just only as an extension of him. I know this because I called him out on it. He got mad, admitted I was right, and said he would be more conscious of it. He has been, but he still can't always see it. And this is one of those times. We're going out of town in early February for a weekend trip that we've both been looking forward to. Ava wants to stay home alone for the weekend, and my husband is refusing. He is insisting she go to her grandparents' house for the weekend because she's a minor and 2 nights is too long. He thinks her putting up a fight about it is suspicious. I offered the compromise of her grandparents coming by to check in on her a couple of times and us setting up the old pet camera by the entrance so she would still have some supervision. And Ava happily agreed. But my husband did not. Ava got upset and cried. My husband thinks it's because she wants to have some wild party. But that's so out of character that I don't know how he believes that. I've talked to Ava, and she just wants to feel like she's trusted and capable. She feels ready and doesn't understand why her dad doesn't trust her enough. I don't either, and I told her so. I'm frustrated enough with the situation and seeing him damage his relationship in the long term that I told my husband that I didn't even want to go anymore. I don't get why he can't see that he's damaging his relationship with her by treating her like she's a convict when she's never given us a reason not to trust her. He got mad and told me that I was undermining his parenting like I always do. Why couldn't I just support him? I got upset and said she needs support more, and now I definitely wanted to cancel the entire trip. Now he's barely speaking to me except to passive-aggressively remind me that he always gets the final say. I do think I might be stepping out of my lane, but it feels like what I should be doing, and I'm just feeling conflicted. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He's overparenting. The best parents I have been around allow their children enough space to grow and make mistakes. Until she gives you a reason not to trust her, I find it unfair and unreasonable to treat her otherwise. The only thing he's doing is setting a bar that is unreachable, which crushes a person's self-esteem and confidence. I have no doubt that if she was ever in a dangerous situation, she would hesitate to call him for fear of over-the-top punishment. You want your kids to respect you as a parent, but trust you enough to confide and be open with you. Your husband isn't a father, but an authoritarian. I urge your husband to cherish the fact that he has a responsible, smart, and sweet child, because if he doesn't, that child will rebel or want nothing to do with him down the road. Not the jerk, but your husband is. Comment 2. If he's the parent and gets the final say, then he should stay home while you get to take the trip. By his logic, she's not your kid. If SD doesn't want to go to grandparents and hubby is not happy leaving her home or with the compromise, then he shouldn't get to go. He needs to stay home and be the parent, not the jerk OP. I hope your husband gets some perspective and realizes he's setting himself up for not having a relationship with his daughter in the long run. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a month since I shared my story about the conflict between my husband, my stepdaughter Ava, and me regarding our weekend trip and Ava wanting to stay home alone. Well, a lot has happened since then, and I'm excited to share the update with you all. After my last post, things got pretty tense at home. My husband was still giving me the cold shoulder, and Ava was feeling more and more like she wasn't trusted. I knew something had to give, so I decided to have a heart-to-heart with my husband. I reminded him of the time when Ava was 12 and she saved up her allowance to buy him a birthday gift all on her own. It was a small gesture, but it showed her maturity and thoughtfulness even back then. That conversation seemed to strike a chord with him. He started to reflect on how Ava had grown over the years and how she had always been responsible. He finally agreed to consider the idea of letting her stay home alone, but he wanted to set some ground rules. Ava was over the moon when we told her the news. She agreed to all of her dad's conditions without hesitation. She even suggested a few of her own, like sending us regular text updates and not having any visitors over. It was clear she just wanted a chance to prove herself. The weekend of our trip finally arrived, and after double and triple checking everything with Ava, we left feeling a bit anxious but hopeful. The first night, Ava sent us a picture of her and our dog curled up on the couch watching movies. It was a relief to see her doing just fine. The next day, however, we received a call from Ava's grandparents. They had decided to drop by unannounced to check on her and walked in on what looked like the aftermath of a party. My heart sank. I couldn't believe Ava would betray our trust like that. We were ready to pack up and head home early when Ava called us, crying. She explained that she hadn't thrown a party. Instead, she had invited her best friend over to study, and they had decided to bake cookies. The party mess was just flour and baking supplies scattered around the kitchen. Ava's grandparents had jumped to conclusions without letting her explain. Feeling a mix of relief and frustration, we apologized to Ava for the misunderstanding and thanked her for being honest with us. We also spoke to her grandparents, who felt terrible about the mix-up. The rest of the weekend went by without a hitch. Ava kept her word, and we returned home to a clean house and a very proud stepdaughter. My husband was impressed with how well she had handled everything, including the false alarm with her grandparents. This experience brought all of us closer together. My husband realized that he needed to trust Ava more and that he could rely on me to help guide her. Ava felt more confident in her independence, and I felt validated in my role as her stepmom. As for my husband and me, we've been working on our communication and making sure we're on the same page when it comes to parenting. He's been more open to my input, and I've been more understanding of his concerns. Just last week, Ava came to us with exciting news. She had been selected as a finalist for a prestigious scholarship based on her academic achievements. We celebrated as a family, and my husband took the opportunity to apologize to Ava for not trusting her enough before. He told her how proud he was of her, and it was a moment I'll never forget. Seeing Ava blossom into a confident young woman has been one of the greatest joys of my life, and knowing that my husband and I can support her together as a team makes me feel incredibly hopeful for the future. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.